Thank you, Bonnie. Good afternoon, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Today, I will be talking about the journey that brought me to Toastmasters. I can remember the first speech that I ever had to give in 8th grade English class. I had just moved to town and I was feeling apprehensive about meeting new friends, dealing with forward people, and fitting in. The assignment for the speech was to give a 5-minute presentation about myself, very similar to what I'm doing today. I had written down notes on my allotted note cards about what I was going to say, how I had just moved to Iowa from Minnesota, how I spent most of the summer at my neighborhood pool, and how my favorite thing in the world was my pet cat, Annabelle. Pretty basic stuff. I could feel the nerves bubbling up in my stomach as I waited my turn, and the first student stepped up to speak. It was Ryan Guffey. You could tell that he was one of the popular kids. He had fancy white sneakers, a Justin Bieber haircut, and he was on the tennis team. As he started to speak, I saw him reach into his pocket. He pulled out a tennis ball and threw it down hard onto the floor, and it bounced back up into his hand, and I felt my heart starting to race. Props? I didn't know that we were allowed to have props. My speech is going to be so boring in comparison to Ryan Guffey's. No one's going to want to be friends with me. I don't have anything interesting to say, I thought. What am I even doing here? I honestly couldn't tell you how that speech went because I have no memory of it, but obviously I survived. For many years, I thought that something must be wrong with me. Why was I so terrified of public speaking? It's an irrational fear. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? In more recent years, I heard the statistic that around 75% of the population has the same fear, which is comforting to know that I'm not alone. And now sometimes during my speeches, I think about how everyone else is just as nervous about their own speeches, and they probably aren't even really listening to me. So Toastmasters has been suggested to me a few times throughout my life, but I always found some excuse not to join, whether it was the location was inconvenient or I just couldn't find the time during college and grad school. But I think the real reason I didn't join was because I was dreading giving an actual speech. Why would I take something up as a hobby that made my stomach hurt, you know? After college, I moved to Chicago for a graduate program in human genetics. I was going to be a scientist, which was so exciting. What I didn't realize was that scientists have to do a lot of presentations, presenting their research and defending my experimental choices. So I got a lot of experience doing PowerPoint presentations where I presented my data. But I find that with PowerPoint presentations, it's very easy to hide behind the words on the slide, the graph, the data, the figures, and kind of use that as a crutch. And I find it a lot harder to give a presentation without slides like I'm doing today. Now I've just moved again to Washington, D.C., and I am a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow at the National Science Foundation. In this transition from being a scientist to moving to the science policy space, communication is more important than ever. As a fellow, professional development is part of my work hours. So when my mentor suggested that I join Toastmasters, this time I had no excuse to say no. So it's been a journey to get here, but I'm excited to be here. And although I can't say I was excited to give this speech, I don't know if I'll ever be able to say that I'm excited to give a speech. If Toastmasters somehow makes that happen, I would consider it a miracle. My less lofty goals are to improve my communication skills and become less nervous when speaking in front of a group. And although there's room for improvement, I still need to remind myself that I've come so far since I was that terrified 8th grader who was so unsure of herself. Thank you for listening.